My boyfriend of almost 3 years told me a series of white lies that to me seem more serious. Can't tell if I'm overreacting or if this is actually indicative of a bigger problem. My boyfriend and I have been dating for almost 3 years, living together for 2. We have a pretty good relationship, obviously with ups and downs, but we make it work and are happy. A little background on me and my boyfriend. I come from a single-parent home. My father was absent. My mother was and is by no means perfect, but she did her best with what she had. We were poor. Life was never easy for us, but we had each other. Since I was pretty young, I've wanted to pay her back someday. I've worked incredibly hard to be able to do so. I help her financially as much as I can and regularly pay her bills //send her cash. I'm also her only living child now, as my brother passed away 5 years ago, which basically left me to help her. I don't care, I love my mother, and the right thing to do is to help her when she needs it. But is stressful. This is relevant because my boyfriend described coming from a somewhat similar past, and it is something we have bonded over. Having the mutual experiences seemed to bring us closer. He told me he also helped his parents financially, and we would often vent to each other about the stress it brings. I am not one to confide in many people, so having someone who I felt like actually understood me was meaningful to me. So here is where the lies come in, and I need someone to either tell me I'm not crazy and this is horror, or that I am crazy and this isn't a huge deal. I'm fine with either. When we met, my boyfriend lived in a condo in a pretty swanky part of the city. I live in the US Northeast. He told me he owned that apartment / condo. I found this to be interesting / odd because he was 28 at the time, and I know this property is upwards of $650,000 on the low end, and he was in an entry-level job for only like 2 years, so the numbers just didn't really add up. Whatever, maybe he's good at saving. But then, since living together, I never once saw a piece of mail for a mortgage payment, electric bill, taxes, nothing. Not for 2 whole years. Very odd. Also, when we started living together, he didn't have his room rented out in the former apartment yet, so he was still responsible for that portion of the rent. He would send a Venmo payment to his mother on the 1st of every month for his portion. I don't own property, but I can't think of a scenario where I would Venmo my mother to pay the mortgage on a property I supposedly own. Getting more odd. He would then go to his parents' house for an afternoon and come back really upset. Usually when I would ask why, it was because they were having financial problems and he needed to help them out. I totally understood this and supported him. He literally has cried on my shoulder about this many times. He tried to start a company years back and ended up getting into debt somehow. He told me this debt was $17,000 and that he paid it off. I'm confused because I met him only 2 to 3 years after the supposed debt accrued / company dissolved, and it was already paid off. He told me when he moved back home after the business failed, he was $17,000 in debt and living at his parents' house working at a minimum wage job. How someone with a minimum wage job pays off that much debt in 3 years, I'll never know. We got into a fight a few weeks ago and I finally had enough and confronted him about these things. He doesn't help his parents, they actually pay his phone bill, and this was all a lie. He doesn't own that apartment, he didn't pay off that debt from his company. He initially told me his parents helped pay it off and then like 3 minutes later, came clean. And said that his business partner paid it off, so I have literally no idea what the truth is there, and if anything, in my eyes. His parents are the ones who are financially supporting him. So now, I'm dating a 31 years old man who doesn't pay his own phone bill, was lying to me and / or completely fabricating aspects of his life for 3 years. And then when confronted about it, continued to make up lies and then came clean about them 5 minutes later. I'm obviously concerned that he could lie for this long, about fundamentally important things like our values, and so on. I sincerely thought I would marry this man. He seemed to understand me like no one else and to be a truly caring and genuine person. Now I'm having a hard time rationalizing actually planning a life around someone who would not only lie about their background and family etc., but also financial aspects. Aside from that, I now can't tell what is the truth and what is a lie. I've also noticed other things he has lied about, called him out on it, and he has denied it outright to my face. I see this as a form of gaslighting, as I know I'm not wrong, but he is trying to convince me otherwise. Am I overreacting? Is this a white lie that went haywire? Or is this actually a series of complete and utter bullshit used to manipulate me? And also, is it insane for me to actually consider a life with this man? I believe it started when I was around 6 years old. My parents often had friends over in the house. I didn't know they were polyamorous OFC. One day I was outside playing, got hurt, and when I ran inside caught my parents making out with some random guy. They told me they have other adults that they love and it's a completely normal thing. Me being a child just accepted that. They gave up being secretive and their partners would constantly be around, even joining on outings. I remember that on my 10th birthday they invited 3 of their partners, one of who I'd never seen before. And for the rest of the day my parents just withdrew from my party and hung out with them. I never saw them doing anything explicit again, but they would kiss their partners, hug them, make flirty comments. Something that would be normal between parents, but with many more people. Sometimes I came home from school and my parents were gone and there was some random adult in our house. Some of them seemed surprised that my parents even had a child. I always hated it, but since my parents had told me this was normal, I assumed many adults probably did similar things and that it's just an adult thing all kids hate. Later they had less partners and eventually seemed to stop. Not that I'd know for sure. I moved out with 17. I didn't think about it anymore. A year ago I started therapy, other reasons. As usual the topic of my upbringing came up and it brought back many feelings I wasn't aware of. I realized that although my parents were always good to me, I had never really felt close to any of them and still have a lot of resentment, that they made me feel like I had to compete for my parents' attention with random strangers. A while ago, I visited them and they told me they are going to take part in a documentary about polyamorous families, and that the producers would like to include interviews with the children. So they would love if I could agree and tell everyone that polyamory doesn't mess kids up. All my resentment bubbled up and I said that I cannot agree because I would not be able to say anything positive. My parents looked shocked. I had never brought this up before, and asked why, and I unloaded all, that I always felt pushed aside. We barely had any family time without strangers intruding. It turned into an argument and I became loud and yelled that the truth is it did me up and they shouldn't have had a child. My mother cried and my father said I should probably leave. So I left and was shaken up for the rest of the week, but also felt regret because I've never made my mom cry before. Later my father sent me a message that was like, "We are sorry you feel that way. Can we have a calm discussion about this soon?" Even though I tried to, it's like I can't reply. This argument brought something very emotional up in me. My graduation ceremony is being held next week. My dad had given me some money in advance to pay for the party. I live mostly with my mom, but they were supposed to be hosting the event together. Dad and I have a rocky relationship. After my parents divorced when I was 4, they split custody of me and he was able to stay a good dad. When I was 10 he met Jane. Jane had 3 kids, twins, and a single kid. They got married when I was 12, but I would say even before that I felt like he prioritized her kids over me a lot. He would cancel plans with me if they wanted to do something and would either do the thing with them or force me to go and say it was even better than our plans, when for me it wasn't. Think going for a hike with me versus taking them to an indoor play area. Or seeing a movie with me versus the kiddie park. One more example is when I was given a ticket for a concert my dad and I both love. He was supposed to buy a ticket to come with me for some father/son time, but actually spent it on his youngest stepkid who wanted their room painted. He told me at the last minute and it hurt. There are other times stuff like this happened. He didn't show up at the hospital when I broke my arm because one stepkid was getting their tonsils out and wanted both him and his wife there. He told my mom over the phone to tell me he was proud of me for being brave and understanding. When I would bring this stuff up to him he'd tell me it was natural to feel jealous of sharing his attention. That was all he would say. In 2019 he told my mom he would split the cost of a trip I wanted to go on with one of my clubs, because she didn't have the money all by herself. Mom had her half saved. We told my dad he needed to pay. He said bills were tight and it was the twins' birthdays and the money needed to go on something for them. He told me we could do something as a family when the trip happened instead. I told him to forget it. That he was making it clear who was more important and I was going to stay with my mom where I actually mattered. Mom borrowed money to cover the other half of the trip. Dad told me he regretted making me feel less important and we were working on things, and then the graduation money was given about a month ago. Then a week ago he called and told me how one of the stepkids was being bullied, how bad of a time they're having it. And with that money they could help cheer them up for their birthday. I was pissed. I hung up. Then 2 days later I showed up at his doorstep, gave him the money and told him I didn't want to see him or his new family at my graduation, and that he had chosen who was more important, so he better stay out of my life. His stepkids and 2 younger bio kids were there. I didn't stick around. He called and told me we needed to talk it out like adults, and that I had hurt the kids' feelings. His wife freaked out on me, so I blocked her. My husband doesn't like to go out much. It's not something that I've ever faulted him for or been mad at him about. We've never gotten in fights about it till now, and it's something he told me up front when we had first gotten in the relationship 4 years ago. I'm never going to be the kind of person that likes to go out a lot. I just want to hang out at home. And I of course said that it was fine because that's not a flaw to me, it's just a character trait. I used to suffer from depression due to a lot of traumas in my life. I found it really hard to go outside at all, and especially alone. I missed out on a lot of experiences because of this. In our first year of dating, he got me to have more confidence in myself, so I stopped hiding. I got a therapist and have been on a wonderful little antidepressant. We got married 1 year later and I'm still happier than I have ever been, and I'm incredibly grateful to have him in my life. That hasn't changed one bit. Now, I know that this isn't what he does. I know that he doesn't stay inside because he's depressed, it's because it's in his nature to be a house cat. And like I said, I'm still fine with that. Lately he's not okay with me doing this, though. If I ask him if he wants to see a movie with me and he said no, or the more common, I don't know, maybe, I'll usually ask him 2 more times, and then if he still says no, or maybe I'll go by myself. It's the same with going out to dinner, taking little classes, etc. We had fun with this at first. I would come home from doing the thing and then I would excitedly tell him what I'd done and the people I'd met. He'd happily listen and hug me and kiss me on the forehead. It was a really beautiful thing. At one point we called it My Little Adventures, and I would take Polaroid pictures and show them to him and then hang them on the kitchen wall. It was a seriously beautiful point in our relationship, and the times that we would go out and take Polaroids together were some of the happiest times in my life. I even made it a point to have us go to things that he liked to do. It was great. It was seriously so great. About 2 years ago I asked him, hey, I've been really passionate about learning a language and eventually going to this language's place of origin. Do you want to study it with me and then go there too? And he said no to the language, but maybe to going with me. Cut to now, and I'm pretty good at this language. I decided about 4 months ago that I am going to this place. I asked he and he would still like to come with me, and he said no and got kind of upset that I had learned this language without him. You're the one that's going to know anything, there's really no point in me going. I was kind of taken aback because during the process he was really supportive. I didn't really push it, but I apologized and went somewhere else to clear my head about things, and we were fine later on that day. I bought the tickets for me and my mother to go to the place about 4 weeks ago, and ever since then, things have been really tense. If I ask him to do minor things, like come to the grocery store with me, he gets a bit of an attitude. I can tell that he knows this is ridiculous though, because he'll say sorry almost immediately and be sad and quiet the rest of the time. I've tried to talk to him about what's bothering him, but he keeps either saying that it's nothing and he doesn't want to talk about it, or will tell me not to press it and then get mad and leave. I don't know what to do at this point. Our relationship has been so great, but I can feel things being strained. I can feel him kind of slipping away. I don't know what to do. I thought about buying him a ticket to the place anyway and surprising him, because I really would love it if he could go with me, and I know for a fact it's somewhere he's always been interested in. But I also don't want to force him, because I hate forcing people to do things. However, I also don't want to stop having these experiences for myself just because he doesn't want to. I've never faulted him for wanting to be at home, so why is he faulting me for wanting to be outside? I don't know how to talk to him or what to say. If I have to stop doing things, then I guess I will. But I also feel bad for having to stop, but it's not worth getting a divorce over or having things escalate that bad. I just don't know what to do or where to go from here. We had a bit of a long talk. I'm kind of a mix of exhausted, drained, and excited now. He said he feels like he's drowning in my success. I said I would learn a language and I did it. I said I would lose 180 pounds and I did it earlier in our relationship and got the skin surgery. I have a pretty stress-free job and it's getting to him. He's been trying really hard to just be happy, but it's hard. He understands that it's wrong to feel this way, and between feeling guilty about it and feeling this way at all, it's just been taking its toll. He also has a skin condition that makes him feel cautious of going outside, especially in another country. I never thought this would be the problem, because he's always acted as though it's not a bother to him at all and he doesn't care. He's going to keep trying though, and to seek therapy independent of me because he thinks that he also may really be suffering from depression. Now, I have to say that we do have communication problems. Our friendship, 2 years before dating, started off long distance in Antwerp, so we're still kind of better with text talking than out loud speaking. Sometimes we have a hard time saying when things are bothering us out loud. So we'll text it out and then read off of that text because we find it hard to verbalize, and sometimes we just take things harder than we should. We've agreed to go to marriage counseling and we're making an appointment together tomorrow, so there are good things afoot. For more good news, he's agreed to go on vacation with me and my mother. I messed up in this, too. I like to think that hearing maybe or other apathetic answers instead of just yes or no didn't bother me, but it did. And sometimes, as some people pointed out, I would get kind of passive-aggressive about it. I'd ask him simply because it meant that I tried at times. I'm not proud of it, but it happened. I'm going to work on that more in myself as well.